Every house, every king, and every battle has its own truth. But there are stories older than crowns, darker than the night, and more dangerous than any blade. They were never written in books. They were whispered to fire, to the trees, and to the dead gods. And today, we dare to uncover one of them. In the heart of King's Landing, where the Red Keep rose high above the churning streets, Queen Margaery Tyrell stood upon her balcony and watched the city stir beneath the morning sun. The bells of the great sept of Baelor rang out across the sprawl of rooftops, echoing over the waters of Blackwater Bay. From here, she could smell the faint sweetness of lemon oil used by the servants to polish the marble floors below, mixed with the harsher scents drifting up from Flea Bottom: smoke, bread, and sweat. It was a city of gold and filth, of prayer and treachery, and Margaery knew it as well as she knew her own smile. Behind that smile lay the sharpest mind in the Seven Kingdoms. The Queen's maid, Eleanor, knelt to fasten the golden clasp at Margaery's shoulder. "His Grace waits in the council chamber, Your Grace," she murmured. "The small folk gather below the steps. They say the High Sparrow walks among them." Margaery's eyes narrowed slightly, though her expression never faltered. "Then let him walk," she said. "Let him see the people's hunger and their pain. If he means to raise himself as their shepherd, he should know what flock he tends." She turned from the balcony, her gown of Tyrell green whispering across the floor. Today, she was to stand beside her young husband, King Tommen Baratheon, during a public audience. The boy king was gentle, too gentle perhaps, and easily guided. Margaery had no wish to wound his innocence, only to steer it, like a gardener shaping the growth of a rose. Her grandmother, the indomitable Olenna Tyrell, had warned her once that kindness could be as deadly as cruelty when wielded by clever hands. "Remember," Olenna had said, as they stood in the gardens of Highgarden before the wedding, "a queen is never merely a wife. She is the mind behind the throne, the whisper behind the smile. Let the lioness snarl. You, my dear, must only bloom." And so Margaery had bloomed. The throne room was filled with courtiers and guards when she entered. Golden light spilling through high windows, glinting on armor and jewels. King Tommen sat upon the iron throne, his feet barely brushing the step below, his crown a touch too large for his brow. At his side, Margaery took her place with a grace so effortless it seemed divine. Her presence softened the room. Her laughter quieted murmurs. Her beauty calmed the restless hearts of men who plotted behind every smile. But in the shadow of a column stood Cersei Lannister, her green eyes cold and watchful. No love passed between the Queen Mother and the young rose from the Reach. To Cersei, Margaery was a serpent hidden among petals, and to Margaery, Cersei was the fire that could burn the whole garden down. When the High Sparrow was led into the hall, barefoot and robed in gray, a murmur rippled through the gathered court. He bowed low before the boy king, yet his gaze rose to Margaery's face with something like appraisal. "Your graces," he said, his voice calm as a prayer. "The gods watch over your reign, but their light is dimmed when sin festers in the hearts of the highborn." A silence followed. Margaery's fingers brushed Tommen's hand gently, a gesture of comfort for him and of warning for herself. "The god's light shines brighter when mercy rules the realm," she answered, her tone warm yet steady. "Would you not agree, good Septon?" The High Sparrow inclined his head, though his eyes did not waver. Mercy must be earned. The court rustled with unease. Margaery could feel Cersei's gaze like a dagger at her back. The faith militant had grown bold of late. Armed men of the Seven marching through the streets, breaking casks of wine, dragging whores from their beds, and shouting of purity and justice. Margaery knew well enough whose hand had guided their rise. Cersei had unleashed them to weaken her rivals, and now they spread like wildfire beyond anyone's control. When the audience ended, Margaery led Tommen away from the throne room. She smiled and spoke softly to him, easing his nerves, teaching him without seeming to. Yet inside her mind, plans unfolded as neatly as petals. Cersei's power was not absolute. The faith, if carefully handled, could become a weapon of its own, one that struck her enemies while keeping her own hands clean. Later that evening, as twilight deepened over the city, Margaery dismissed her ladies and sat alone beside a single candle. She unrolled a letter from Highgarden, sealed in green wax and bearing her grandmother's sigil. The Queen of Thorns wasted no ink on pleasantries. "My sweet girl, the game turns. Cersei thinks herself clever, but fools who play with fire are soon burned. You must keep the boy close and the sparrow closer. Men like him believe they serve gods, but they truly serve those who make them feel righteous. Feed him honey before you draw his sting." Margaery smiled faintly and folded the letter away. Outside, the bells tolled again, low and mournful. She rose, her reflection flickering in the candle's flame. "Then let us play," she whispered, her voice soft as silk. "For I am not a rose to be plucked. I am the thorn." And as the night descended upon King's Landing, Margaery Tyrell began to weave the first strands of a web that would soon ensnare queen and sparrow alike. A web spun not with blood or steel, but with charm, wit, and quiet resolve. The days that followed were steeped in unease. Summer still lingered, heavy and airless, pressing down upon King's Landing like a velvet shroud. The small folk labored beneath the sun's harsh glare, their tempers short and their faith growing fierce. In the taverns, whispers traveled faster than coin, of the High Sparrow's sermons, of sin in high places, of the Queen's soft hands and softer words. Margaery Tyrell listened to every murmur that reached her ears. She had learned long ago that truth seldom came dressed in silk. It came from the mouths of washerwomen and the trembling hands of servants who carried water through the Red Keep. Her spies were not knights or nobles, but those who were unseen. A coin placed here, a kind word there, and the river of rumor began to flow her way. One evening, beneath the fading light, she summoned Sir Loras to her solar. Her brother entered, still bearing the scars of battle, though he smiled as if untouched by them. Yet the sharpness in his eyes betrayed what he hid: pain and pride, and fear of being trapped within walls rather than riding beneath banners. "Sister," he said, bending to kiss her hand, "I hear you are growing popular with the faith. Should I fear you'll trade roses for prayers?" She smiled. "You speak as though the two are not the same thing, dear brother. A rose grows best when tended by the faithful, and the faith now tends the realm." Loras frowned. "They're zealots, Margaery. Their swords are no longer sheathed, and their tongues cut deeper than steel. Cersei set them loose, and even she cannot leash them now." "That is why I must," she said quietly. "They are vines with no trellis. If I give them purpose, they will grow where I guide them." Loras studied her face, saw the calm determination there, and sighed. "I have fought in wars," he said softly, "but I have never feared for you more than I do now." "Then pray for me," Margaery replied with a faint smile, "and trust that the gods favor those who know their own worth." That night, a carriage cloaked in plain wood rolled from the gates of the Red Keep. Within it sat the queen, veiled and unadorned, dressed in simple gray. Only one guard rode behind, her loyal cousin Eleanor, disguised as her maid. They passed through the narrow streets, where torches flickered in the darkness, and the smell of tallow and rain filled the air. The great sept loomed ahead, its domes pale against the night sky. When they arrived, the High Sparrow was waiting, lantern in hand. "Your Grace," he greeted her, bowing low. "It is not often that a queen visits in the dead of night." "The gods do not sleep," Margaery answered, "nor should those who serve them." He studied her face, searching for vanity, for deceit. Finding none, or thinking he did not, he led her into the sept. Candles burned in quiet rows, their light trembling on the carved faces of the seven. "I have heard," she began, "that the faith feeds the hungry, clothes the poor, and cleanses the wicked. But I wonder, good Septon, what feeds the faith itself?" He turned to her, eyes gleaming with austere fervor. "Truth. The truth that the highborn and the low alike are equal before the gods. The faith feeds upon honesty, not gold." "Then perhaps I may offer both," she said smoothly. "If the faith is to guide the realm, it must be strong. I can see to that, if the faith in turn guards the virtue of the crown." He frowned slightly. "Virtue needs no guard." "Not when all hearts are pure," she said, her voice gentle. "But tell me, holy man, are all hearts in King's Landing pure?" The silence that followed was answer enough. When at last she departed, the High Sparrow's eyes lingered upon her retreating form. She had said nothing that could be called treason or bargain, yet somehow a pact had been forged between them, unseen, unspoken, but real. In the days that followed, her influence began to spread through quiet channels. She arranged alms for the poor, food for the orphaned, candles for the sept's shrines, each gift delivered not by couriers of the crown, but by the faith's own brothers. The people saw the queen's kindness and whispered that the gods favored her. Cersei, meanwhile, watched with growing fury. One afternoon she entered the council chamber unannounced, sweeping past the startled guards. Tommen sat beside Margaery, listening to a report on the city's unrest. The Queen Mother's voice cut through the air like steel. "What game do you play, girl?" she hissed. "You court the faith like a lover while they gnaw at the bones of my house." Margaery rose with the poise of one who had expected the strike. "I seek only peace, your grace. The faith is strong. It would be folly not to make them friends. They are not your friends. They are wolves cloaked in scripture. Then better to feed the wolves than be devoured by them." Tommen's young face tightened with distress. "Mother, please, Margaery is only trying to help the city." Cersei turned her wrath upon her son, but Margaery laid a calming hand upon his arm. "Let us not quarrel," she said softly. "The gods frown upon discord in family." Cersei's lips curved in a mirthless smile. "Then may the gods frown forever upon mine," she said, and swept from the room. When the doors closed, Margaery let out a slow breath. She knew Cersei's hatred was not the idle spite of a jealous woman. It was the venom of a cornered lioness, and she knew too that her every move would now be shadowed, her every ally tested. That night, she stood again upon her balcony, the city glittering below like a field of dying stars. The wind carried faint cries and laughter from the streets, the restless hum of a kingdom teetering between faith and fire. She thought of her grandmother's words. "Let the lioness snarl. You must bloom. Yet the bloom must hide its thorns well, lest they be cut." Beneath the moon, she whispered to the wind, as though speaking to the gods themselves. I will not be undone by fire or fang. Let them conspire, let them rage, the rose endures. And in that quiet moment, as the bells tolled midnight over the sleeping city, Margaery Tyrell, queen, prisoner of silk and scheme alike, felt the shape of destiny tightening around her. She would win not by sword or flame, but by the steady, cunning patience of one who knew how to grow beauty in even the darkest soil. Morning broke upon King's Landing with the color of tarnished silver. Mist rolled over the rooftops, muffling the cries of gulls and the chatter of market folk. From her chamber window, Margaery Tyrell watched the fog drift across the Red Keep's towers, veiling the city in half-light. It seemed to her a fitting image. All things in this place were half-seen, half-truths dressed in the robes of honesty. She turned away as her maid set a tray of figs and warm bread upon the table. The small council would meet before noon, and she must be ready. Cersei's temper, she knew, would not rest long. It would strike again, swift and burning, and Margaery must meet it with the cool patience of stone. Her ladies entered soon after, bright as spring birds in silks of pale green and gold. Eleanor whispered the morning's gossip, that the faith militant had arrested 3 knights for drunkenness, that beggars knelt in prayer outside the sept until they fainted, that Cersei had been seen conferring with the Grand Maester late into the night. Each tidbit was a thread, and Margaery gathered them all. "Let them speak of piety," she said softly, tasting the sweetness of a fig. "Words shape belief, and belief shapes power. If the city believes me holy, then holiness will serve my cause." Her cousin smiled. "And if the city believes otherwise, then I shall become what they believe." By midday, the council chamber buzzed with unease. The king's advisors murmured of debts, unrest, and shortages of grain. Margaery listened, her gaze steady on the map of Westeros spread before them, a land bleeding from too many wars, ruled by too many hungry hearts. Tommen sat beside her, his boyish face pale beneath his crown. "My lady wife has counseled that the granaries of the Reach may aid us," he said, his voice uncertain. "The Tyrell ships can bring wheat to feed the city." A murmur of approval rippled through the lords. Only Cersei's eyes stayed cold, and what would House Tyrell ask in return? She said, voice dripping with false sweetness. Margaery smiled faintly. "Only that the people live to see the harvest, your grace. A starving city cannot serve its king." Cersei leaned back, fingers curling around the arm of her chair. "So benevolent," she murmured. "So kind. I wonder, daughter, whether your charity hides ambition." "Ambition is the province of men," Margaery said, her tone gentle but sure. "Women must make do with influence." The lords chuckled uneasily, and Tommen, poor boy, flushed crimson. Cersei's mouth tightened to a thin line. "Indeed," she said softly, "and influence, like wine, can sour when left too long in the sun." The meeting ended with little decided but much felt. As they left the chamber, Margaery touched her husband's arm. "You spoke well," she told him. "You will be a wise king in time." Tommen looked up at her, hopeful. "Do you think so?" "Mother says I am too soft." "Kindness is not weakness," she said. "The realm will remember a gentle hand long after it forgets the lash." But in her heart she knew Cersei was right in one thing. Kindness alone would not keep the throne. That evening she received a visitor, the High Sparrow himself, robed in gray and flanked by 2 of his silent followers. They entered her solar without ceremony, their sandaled feet leaving faint smudges of dust on the marble floor. "Your Grace," he said, bowing his head. "I come not as judge, but as servant. There are those within the faith who question your virtue. They whisper that your smiles are masks, that your heart is proud. Margaery met his gaze calmly. If pride leads me to feed the hungry and shelter the poor, then I pray the gods forgive such sin. The old man's eyes softened a fraction. Words well spoken, yet rumor breeds swiftly. To silence doubt, you must show humility, a true sign of repentance for the vanity of the great. Then I shall serve where service is needed, she said. Name it, and I will obey. He regarded her for a long moment, as if testing the weight of her soul. Come to the Sept tomorrow. Walk among the destitute, pray beside them, eat their bread, hear their confessions. Let the city see its queen not as idol, but as sister. She bowed her head. It shall be done. The next day dawned cloudless and cruelly hot. Margaery went barefoot to the great sept, dressed in plain linen, her hair unbound. The small folk gathered in awe as she passed, some whispering blessings, others weeping openly. In the sept's cool shadow, she knelt beside a beggar woman and helped her wash her hands in a basin of holy water. May the seven keep you, my queen, the woman sobbed. Margaery smiled gently. It is not I who keep you, but the gods. Pray they guide us both. The High Sparrow watched from a distance, his expression unreadable. By sunset, word of the queen's piety had spread through every alley and marketplace. The people called her the flower of the faith. But Cersei's spies saw too, and by nightfall, her fury was legend. Do you mean to shame me before my own city? Cersei demanded, storming into Margaery's chambers. You prance barefoot through the streets like a penitent whore, while fools call you saint. You turn the mob against their true queen. Margaery did not rise from her chair. She only looked up, serene. The gods see us all as equals, your grace. If they bless me with favor, who am I to refuse it? Cersei's hand twitched toward the dagger at her belt. For a moment, Margaery thought she might strike, but instead, the lioness only laughed, a low, dangerous sound. You think yourself clever, but I see through your tricks, and soon, so will the gods. When she was gone, Margaery's calm cracked for the first time. Her heart beat hard against her ribs. She turned to Eleanor. She will not stop, she whispered. If she cannot outwit me, she will destroy me. Eleanor's eyes darkened. Then we must strike first. No, said Margaery, not yet. She digs her own grave, stone by stone. I will simply make sure she finishes the work. That night, thunder rolled over the city, and lightning lit the sky above the sept. Margaery stood at her window, watching the storm. The wind tore at the banners on the towers, and the rain swept the streets clean of dust and ash. In the distance, the sept's spires gleamed with each flash, proud, unbending, and perilously close to the fire that would one day consume them. She closed her eyes and whispered a silent vow. I will endure. The rose will not fall before the storm. And below her, unseen in the darkness, Cersei's own storm was already gathering, one born not of wind and water, but of wildfire and wrath. The game had truly begun. The summer's heat deepened, swelling over King's Landing like a fever. The air hung thick with the smell of salt and smoke, and the city's tempers burned with it. The bells of the great sept rang more often now, not for prayer alone, but for judgment. Each peal carried news of another sinner stripped of silk and finery, marched barefoot through the streets to atone. From her chamber high in the Red Keep, Margaery watched one such procession wind its way below. The faith militant led the condemned, a merchant accused of deceit, through the crowd, his head bowed, his back bare to the sun. The people jeered and threw rotten fruit, but behind the cruelty gleamed a new hunger, the hunger of righteousness. "It grows worse by the day," said her cousin Eleanor quietly. "The city worships the faith as if they were gods themselves." "Then we must remind them," Margaery murmured, "that gods cannot rule without queens." She turned from the window. Her gown today was pale gray, edged in white, a careful balance between queenly dignity and pious restraint. The court called her the flower of the faith, but she knew better. She was the hand that pruned the garden, shaping every vine that reached toward power. That afternoon, she met with the High Sparrow once more. The Sept's great doors were open, and light fell through stained glass like shards of emerald and sapphire. He stood near the altar, his head bowed in prayer. "Your Grace," he said as she approached, "the city rejoices at your humility, but some question the sincerity of your heart." "I have no heart to hide," she answered gently. "Only a duty to my king, my people, and to the 7 who see all." He raised his eyes, sharp beneath the kindly calm. "There are whispers," he said, "that you use the faith to strengthen your house, that you weave favor with holy thread while others suffer." Margaery let silence linger before she spoke. "If kindness is a sin, then I am guilty. But if those who slander me serve other masters, should the faith not judge them first?" He regarded her for a long moment. "Words are wind, Your Grace. Deeds prove truth. Perhaps you will join us in service, to feed the hungry at dawn, to clothe the naked. Let your hands speak where tongues falter." "I will come," she said, her voice soft but steady. "And when I do, the city shall see that even queens bleed when they work." As she left, the candlelight caught the faintest tremor of unease in the old man's eyes. He was not a fool. He knew she sought power even as she knelt in humility. But she had wrapped her ambition in the raiment of faith, and the faith itself could not tear that veil without wounding its own virtue. In the small hours before dawn, Margaery rose to serve as she had promised. The Sept's lower halls were cold, their stones damp with morning mist. She ladled broth into wooden bowls, handed bread to beggars, and knelt beside the sick. The work was hard, the air heavy with the stench of unwashed bodies and incense, yet she endured it with quiet grace. The small folk whispered blessings upon her. To them, she was the image of mercy, a queen who walked among the wretched without fear or disdain. They saw her gentleness, not the calculation behind her smile. By noon, word of her service had swept through the city. In the markets and taverns, men spoke of her with reverence. Mothers lifted their children to see her pass, calling her the good queen, the one the gods had truly chosen. When the tale reached the Red Keep, Cersei's rage knew no bounds. She came to Margaery's chamber at twilight, unannounced as ever. The door slammed open, and there she stood, golden hair wild, her eyes like twin flames. "You play a dangerous game, child," Cersei hissed. "You think to steal the hearts of the people from their true queen." Margaery rose slowly, unruffled. "The people's hearts are not stolen, Your Grace. They are won. Won with lies." "With bread," Margaery corrected softly, "and kindness. 2 things the realm has long forgotten." Cersei's hand twitched, the gleam of her ring catching the light. "You think yourself safe behind that boy's love and the sparrow's blessing, but both are frail shields. The gods tire quickly of vanity, and boys grow into men who see too clearly." Margaery tilted her head. "And when that day comes, I will still be queen." For a heartbeat, silence stretched between them, taut, breathless. Then Cersei smiled, slow and cold. "We shall see," she whispered. "The gods have a way of humbling those who mistake cunning for wisdom." She swept out, leaving the scent of myrrh and malice in her wake. When the door closed, Margaery's poise wavered. She sank onto the edge of her bed, feeling the faint tremor in her hands. Eleanor came to her side, eyes wide. "She means to strike. I can see it." "I know," Margaery said, "but we will not cower. Every move she makes must draw her deeper into the snare. Then what will you do?" Margaery looked toward the window, where the last light of day bathed the city in gold. "I will give her exactly what she desires, proof of her own victory." Eleanor frowned, not understanding. But Margaery only smiled. A trap works best when the prey believes it hunts. In the days that followed, Margaery withdrew slightly from public life. She attended prayers but spoke less. Her smile, once bright, grew faint and weary. Rumors began to stir that she had angered the gods, that she had grown proud, that the queen's virtue was not so spotless as her robes. Cersei's agents fed the whispers, and the faith's ears caught them eagerly. The High Sparrow sent word that the queen must answer certain accusations. When the summons came, Margaery was ready. She appeared before the Council of the Faith in the great hall of the Sept, dressed in white, her hair unbound as a sign of humility. The air was thick with the scent of incense and fear. The High Sparrow raised his hand. "Margaery Tyrell, Queen of the Seven Kingdoms," he intoned, "you stand accused of bearing false witness, of harboring deceit within your heart, and of leading your household into sin." A hush fell. Cersei watched from the shadows, her lips curved in triumph. Margaery lifted her chin. "I have served the gods in word and deed. If there is sin in my heart, let them see it and judge me. I am not afraid." She knelt upon the cold stone floor, her hands clasped in prayer. The silence stretched, broken only by the creak of timbers and the faint whisper of candles. Then, from the crowd, a voice rose, a woman's voice, rough with age and conviction. "The queen gave my children bread when no one else would. She prayed for my dying husband. I saw her kindness with mine own eyes." Another voice joined, then another, until the hall filled with cries of mercy, innocence, the flower of the faith. The High Sparrow raised his hands for silence, but the crowd's devotion could not be stilled. Cersei's smile faltered. Margaery bowed her head humbly, though triumph flickered in her eyes. The people themselves had spoken her defense. That night, as she returned to the Red Keep, thunder rumbled again over the city. She stood upon her balcony, the rain cooling her fevered thoughts. Cersei had struck and failed, but the Queen Mother would not rest. There would be another move, another trap, more cunningly set. Margaery closed her eyes and breathed deeply, tasting the scent of rain and smoke. "Let it come," she whispered. "For every snare she sets, I shall find the thread that unravels it." And in the distance, lightning flared above the great sept, illuminating its towers in green light, a brief, eerie glow that vanished as swiftly as it came. Margaery watched it fade, unaware that it was a shadow of what would one day burn the world she sought to rule. For now, the game belonged to her, and in her heart bloomed the quiet certainty that no rose ever thrived without weathering the storm. The moon waned thin over King's Landing, a silver sliver above the restless sea. Nights grew uneasy, filled with the sounds of distant bells and the soft tramp of the Faith militant patrolling the streets. Within the Red Keep, shadows lengthened like fingers reaching for the crown itself. Margaery Tyrell lay awake in her chamber, staring at the canopy above her bed. Sleep eluded her, for she felt the air itself shifting, heavy with the scent of danger. Cersei's silence had become more fearsome than her wrath. The Queen Mother had vanished from the court for days, seen only by her guards and her maester. Such stillness in an enemy was not peace. It was the calm before a storm. When dawn came, it brought no comfort. A servant entered with downcast eyes, bearing news that chilled her blood. Sir Loras, her beloved brother, had been seized by the faith. Accused of vile sin, he was held within the sept to be judged by the gods. Margaery rose at once, her calm a fragile mask upon a breaking heart. "Summon the High Septon," she ordered, her voice sharp as glass. "No one accuses a Tyrell without cause." The servant bowed and fled, and Eleanor, pale with shock, whispered, "This is her doing, isn't it? Cersei's hand behind it." "Whose else?" Margaery murmured. "The faith would not dare strike at me directly, not yet, so they strike through my blood." Her jaw tightened. "Then we will answer in kind." The great sept of Baelor was crowded when she arrived. The scent of incense thickened the air, and torchlight trembled upon the carved faces of the seven. The High Sparrow met her at the entrance, his calm unbroken, though his followers barred her way. "My brother is a knight of the Kingsguard," she said coldly. "He has given his life to the realm. On whose authority do you bind him?" "On the gods," replied the sparrow, unmoved. "All men are equal before them. No white cloak absolves sin." "You speak of sin as if it were a coin to trade," she said. "Be wary, holy man. Those who claim the god's voice often hear only their own." The faintest flicker crossed his face, something between doubt and warning. "I serve only truth, and truth will judge him." "Then let truth judge me as well," she said, stepping forward until the guard's spears crossed before her. "For I will not stand idle while my brother suffers for the vanity of others." The High Sparrow's brow furrowed. "Be careful, your grace. Defiance is perilous." "So is faith," she replied, turning away, "especially when wielded like a sword." When she returned to the Red Keep, the court was alive with whispers. Cersei sat beside Tommen in the council chamber, a smile playing on her lips. "My sweet queen," Cersei purred, "I hear troubling news. The faith has taken your brother. A tragedy, truly. But perhaps this will remind us all that even those who wear flowers may bear thorns." Margaery met her gaze, unflinching. "A tragedy indeed, your grace, and I am sure the gods will remember who planted those thorns." Cersei's smile widened. "Careful, child. Accusations are treacherous things. Best to leave such matters to the holy." "I intend to," Margaery said smoothly. "I shall go before them myself and prove the Tyrell honor unsullied." Tommen looked up in alarm. "You don't need to." "I must," she said softly, her hand on his. "The realm must see that its queen is without fear." Cersei leaned back, satisfied. "Then let the gods judge us all." The next day, Margaery stood before the High Sparrow again, this time beneath the full gaze of the faith. The hall was filled with quiet hostility, eyes gleaming with piety and envy alike. The air felt close, heavy with the weight of unseen judgment. "You come to us freely," the sparrow said, "to deny the charges against your brother and yourself. I come to remind you that mercy and wisdom are the twin pillars of faith," she answered. "Without them, the house of the gods will crumble." "You speak well," he said, though his voice carried no warmth. "But there are those who swear you have lied before the seven. They say you concealed your brother's sin and thus partook in it by silence." Gasps rippled through the hall. Margaery's pulse quickened, yet her voice remained steady. "Words spoken in fear are not truth. Would you condemn a man upon whispers? Whispers sometimes hide the voice of the gods. said the sparrow. Then let the gods speak clearly, she replied, her chin high. I will kneel before them and swear my innocence upon the mother's mercy. If I lie, may her light forsake me. The crowd murmured approval. Even the sparrow hesitated before nodding. So be it. But know this, the gods see all, and their justice spares no one. Days passed in uneasy suspense. Margaery was allowed to return to her chambers, yet guards watched her every move. Loras remained in the Sept's dungeons, and each dawn brought new rumors of his torment. Tommen wept when he heard, swearing to free her, but his mother's counsel bound his hands. The faith must not be angered, Cersei told him. To defy them is to defy the gods. And so Margaery waited, trapped in golden confinement, her every breath measured by unseen eyes. She knew her enemy's hand even in this. Cersei had turned the faith's zeal into a weapon, but she had forgotten one truth. A weapon raised too high can turn upon its master. On the 7th night of her confinement, Margaery knelt before her window, the moonlight painting her face in silver. A faint knock came at the door. Eleanor slipped inside, her cloak damp with rain. They move against Cersei, she whispered. The faith grows restless. They speak of purging all corruption, high and low alike. Margaery's heart quickened. Then our moment has come. Yes, but we must be cautious. The sparrow suspects all. If he sees you as part of her sin, he will not hesitate. Margaery stood, her eyes fierce. Then I shall show him what true piety looks like. If I must walk through fire to prove my innocence, I will. And when I emerge, it is Cersei who will burn. Eleanor looked at her queen, awe mingling with fear. You sound like your grandmother. Perhaps, Margaery said softly. But grandmother plays her games from afar. I play mine in the lion's den. The bells of the city tolled at dawn. Cersei's hand had moved again, but so too had fate's. The faith summoned both queens to face the gods' justice. Margaery dressed in white silk, her hair unbound, her heart steady. As she stepped into the corridor, she saw Cersei's chamber door barred by guards, the queen mother absent, her whereabouts unknown. Something was wrong. She turned to Eleanor. Find her, she whispered. Now. But before her cousin could move, the first thunder of distant bells reached their ears, slow, deep, and strange. The sound rolled through the city like a warning from the heavens. Margaery felt the air grow still, the candles flicker, and in her heart bloomed a sudden, terrible knowing that all her careful webs, all her patient cunning, were about to meet something far greater and far more merciless than human malice. The game was changing, and somewhere beneath the stones of the city, something ancient and green began to wake. The morning rose pale and uncertain, as if the sun itself hesitated to look upon King's Landing. A low wind moaned through the towers of the Red Keep, carrying the scent of ash and salt from the sea. Bells tolled ceaselessly from the sept, slow, ponderous, the voice of judgment. Margaery Tyrell stood before her mirror, and for the first time in many days, she did not see a queen. She saw a woman marked by fear and resolve in equal measure. Her hair hung loose over her shoulders, her gown plain white, the symbol of innocence before the gods. Yet behind her, calm eyes burned a flicker of iron, the same fire that had guided her through courtly deceit and silent wars of wit. Eleanor stood beside her, fastening the last clasp of her cloak. The faith commands that you appear before the seven, she said, her voice low. They will demand confession. Confession is for the guilty, Margaery replied, and I am not guilty. Eleanor hesitated. The streets are filled with crowds. They chant your name and the sparrows alike. It is as if the whole city waits to see who the gods will favor. Then they shall see, said Margaery, and they shall remember. She turned from the mirror and took her crown, not of gold, but of woven silver and pearls. It glimmered faintly in the dawn light, delicate and defiant. "This is not the day of my fall," she murmured. "It is the day of truth." The great sept of Baelor stood before her like a mountain of marble and shadow. Its 7 towers reached toward the heavens, and its great doors were thrown wide. 1,000 candles burned within, their light wavering against the carved faces of saints and angels. Margaery entered at the head of a procession of guards and faithful. The air was thick with incense. The sound of chanting filled the vast space like a heartbeat. Upon the steps of the altar stood the High Sparrow, barefoot and robed in gray. "My queen," he said as she approached, "you come to stand before the gods, to swear truth or perish in deceit. Are you prepared?" "I am," she said, her voice clear though her hands trembled within her sleeves. The hall grew silent, every eye fixed upon her, noble and beggar alike, united in morbid fascination. The sparrow raised his arms. "Let the gods bear witness," he cried. "Here stands Margaery Tyrell, queen of the 7 kingdoms, accused of false witness, of lies and pride. Will you confess and seek their mercy?" Margaery took a slow breath. "I confess only this, that I have sought to serve the realm with wisdom and the gods with faith. If that be sin, then I am indeed guilty." A ripple moved through the gathered faithful. The sparrow frowned slightly, for she had yielded nothing, yet given them words they could not easily condemn. "Then kneel," he said, "and let the mother's light reveal your heart." She knelt. Cold stone bit into her knees, and the scent of burning oil filled her lungs. A beam of sunlight, filtered through colored glass, fell upon her bowed head. For a moment, she felt a strange peace, as if the world held its breath. Then a murmur rippled through the crowd. Somewhere beyond the sept, a bell began to toll again, deep, slow, uneven. Margaery lifted her head. "What is that?" she whispered. The sparrow glanced toward the doors, frowning. "The bells of the sept alone should sound this day," he said. Another bell answered, distant and discordant. Then came a third, lower, heavier, and the sound rolled through the city like thunder. Margaery's breath caught. A memory stirred, her warning to him weeks before. "There is wildfire beneath the city. Be wary of the lioness's silence." Her heart lurched. She turned sharply to the sparrow. "You must clear the sept," she said. "Now. Do you hear me?" "Something is wrong." The old man frowned, raising a hand to calm her. "Your Grace, this is the god's house. There is no danger here." "There is," she cried, rising to her feet. "The Queen Mother is not here. She should be, yet she stays away. Do you not see? It is a trap. You must—" The rest was drowned by a low rumble beneath their feet. Candles trembled. Dust fell from the high arches. A sound like the earth itself groaning filled the air. Screams broke the silence. Margaery's blood turned to ice. "Run!" she shouted. "Get out! Everyone out!" But it was too late. The floor split with a shuddering roar. A wave of green fire erupted from the depths, engulfing the altar, the pews, the very air. It rose in a wall of light, fierce and beautiful, consuming stone and flesh alike. For one blinding instant, Margaery saw everything. The sparrow's face frozen in disbelief, the faithful scattering like leaves in a storm, the stained glass windows exploding into shards of jeweled fire. She tried to move, but the force hurled her backward. The heat seared her lungs, and yet, for that heartbeat of eternity, she felt no fear, only a strange, fierce clarity. So this is how she wins. The world dissolved into brilliance. Far above, in the Red Keep, Cersei Lannister watched from her window. Below, the great sept blossomed into a flower of green flame. The sound reached her after a moment, a deep, thunderous roar that shook the stones. She smiled faintly and raised her cup of wine. Margaery Tyrell's cunning, her beauty, her poise, all turned to ash in a single breath. The shrewdest woman in the realm was gone. But fire is never the end of a story. In the Reach, far from the city's smoke, the news spread like a bitter wind. Lady Olenna sat in the gardens of Highgarden, her face pale as marble as she read the raven's message. "So," she murmured, "the lioness roars again." Her wrinkled hands crushed the parchment. "You were the cleverest of us all, child," she whispered, "and they burned you for it. But the game is not done." She rose slowly, leaning on her cane, and looked eastward where the dawn was breaking. "The fire took you," she said, "but the flower's seed remains." And somewhere, in the ashes of the sept, the wind stirred. The flames had devoured all flesh and stone. But deep in the wreckage, beneath the ruins of the altar, a single silver circlet lay untouched by soot. It gleamed faintly in the dying light, like a promise waiting to be kept. The sun rose pale and strange over the smoking ruins of King's Landing. A gray haze veiled the city, heavy with the scent of ash and death. The great sept of Baelor was gone, reduced to rubble and molten glass, its towers shattered, its bells silenced forever. Where once had stood the heart of faith, there remained only a pit of blackened stone, still hissing with heat. In the days that followed, the city moved like one struck blind. Priests wandered aimlessly through the streets, their faith turned to dust. The small folk whispered of divine wrath, of green demons rising from the depths. And in the Red Keep, the new queen, Cersei Lannister, crowned by her own hand, ruled from a throne built not of iron alone, but of fire and silence. Yet not all who were thought dead had perished. Beneath the shattered vaults of the sept, where twisted beams and fallen statues lay tangled, a faint movement stirred. From beneath a mound of debris, a hand reached out, pale, trembling, bloodied. It clawed at the stone, found purchase, and dragged forth a woman cloaked in ash and ruin. Margaery Tyrell gasped for breath, her lungs burning, her vision swimming in green. The air stank of smoke and melted flesh. The world above was gone, the light dim and strange, filtering through cracks in the ruin. For a long while she lay there, unable to move, her mind grasping at fragments of memory. The roar, the fire, the faces swallowed by light. She had no sense of how she lived when all others had burned. Perhaps she had been shielded by a fallen arch, or by some cruel miracle of the gods. But she lived, and that, she thought faintly, was enough. She stumbled through the wreckage, each step a struggle. The once great sept was now a labyrinth of ruin, corridors choked with ash, statues toppled like broken kings. Every sound echoed strangely, as if the stones themselves whispered of the dead. At last, she found a gap in the wall, a narrow passage leading out into the open air. She emerged into the cold morning, blinking at the light. The city stretched before her, unfamiliar in its stillness. Crowds gathered in the distance, staring in horror at the smoking crater. Margaery drew the hood of a tattered cloak over her head and moved among them. No one recognized her. Her gown was torn, her face smeared with soot and blood. To them, she was but another survivor. one more ghost among thousands. She listened as they spoke. "They say the gods struck down the false queen," a man muttered. "They burned her for her pride." "Aye," said another, "and good riddance, I say. The faith was rotten with lies." Margaery felt no anger, only a cold, hollow ache. The people she had fed, comforted, charmed. They had already turned the page. The fire had not only consumed her flesh, but her name. So she walked on, a shadow moving unseen through the city she had once ruled. As night fell, she found shelter in the ruins of an old inn by the river. The walls were scorched, the windows shattered, but it was quiet, and quiet was rare in King's Landing. She wrapped herself in a torn blanket and sat beside a guttering candle. When she closed her eyes, she saw the green fire again, felt its heat, its light, its merciless hunger. Yet beneath that terror flickered something else. A vision of Cersei's face, calm and cold, watching from afar. "She thinks me dead," Margaery whispered to the dark. "Let her think so. Let her believe she has won." Her hand tightened around the silver circlet she had salvaged from the ashes, the one she had worn at her trial. It was bent, blackened at the edges, yet still it gleamed faintly in the candlelight. "The rose blooms again," she murmured, "even from ash." Weeks passed. Word spread across the realm of the Queen's death, of Cersei's coronation, of the Tyrells broken in the Reach. But in the shadows of the city, whispers began anew, of a woman with eyes like stormlight who walked among the poor, healing wounds, offering coins, asking questions. Some said she was a spirit. Others claimed she was the mother returned to walk among her children. Margaery listened to these tales with quiet amusement. Disguise had become her armor, rumor her shield. She watched and waited. The Red Keep's grip was not unbreakable. Cersei's reign was born of terror, and terror bred rebellion. The small folk still starved, the lords still schemed, and the faith, shattered though it was, still whispered vengeance in the dark. She sought them out, the remnants of the sparrows who had once followed the High Sparrow. Some cursed her name, blaming her for the sept's fall. Others, seeing the fire in her eyes, bowed their heads in reverence. "I was judged with you," she told them. "I lived when your brothers died, not by choice, but by fate. The gods spared me for a purpose, to restore what was broken." The ragged men and women knelt before her. One whispered, "Are you their chosen?" Margaery only smiled. "No," she said, "but I am what this city needs." By the third moon after the fire, the whispers had spread beyond the capital. In the taverns of the Reach, travelers spoke of a ghost queen who walked the streets of King's Landing, gathering the broken and the poor. In the court of Highgarden, Lady Olenna received a sealed letter, written in a hand she had thought lost forever. It bore only a single line: "The flower grows again." The old woman's hand trembled as she read. For the first time in many months, she allowed herself to smile. "So you live, my clever girl," she murmured. "Then may the gods have mercy on the lioness." In King's Landing, the new queen's rule darkened by the day. Cersei's spies filled the streets, her guards patrolled like wolves. But the city had grown weary of fear. Bread was scarce, gold scarcer still, and in the slums and alleyways, candles began to burn at night, hundreds of them, small and flickering, each one lit for the true queen who walks unseen. One evening, from the tower of the Red Keep, Cersei gazed across the city and saw the lights. Tiny sparks in the dark, scattered like stars fallen to earth. "What is this?" she demanded. "Superstition, your grace," said Qyburn. "The rabble light candles for the dead queen. They say her spirit watches them." Cersei's lips tightened. Then let them choke on their candles, she hissed. I buried that flower myself. Yet deep within her heart, she felt a flicker of unease, for fire cannot kill a shadow, and some names refuse to die. Beneath the city, in the hidden vaults once used by the alchemists, Margaery stood among her growing followers. The torchlight glimmered on faces filled with hunger and hope. Cersei burned the god's house, she said quietly. She thinks herself their judge, but fire cannot cleanse what festers in the dark. The realm needs balance, mercy as well as justice. We shall bring it. A murmur rose around her, low and fervent. For the queen, they whispered. For the rose. Margaery lifted her silver circlet, its surface scarred and darkened by flame. She set it upon her head, and in that moment, the crowd knelt as one. The queen had returned, not in silk and gold, but in shadow and resolve. And though she had no throne, no crown, and no army, she had something far stronger. The faith of the forgotten. The fire that had destroyed her had forged her anew. The shrewdest woman in the realm was not dead. She was waiting. Autumn crept upon the city like a thief, stealing the warmth from the days and leaving the nights long and brittle. The sea mists drifted over the harbor, veiling ships in gray. Rats grew bold in the alleys, and the people huddled close to their fires, whispering the name of a ghost queen who would one day return. Beneath their feet, in chambers forgotten by all but the rats and the faith's last faithful, Margaery Tyrell moved among her followers. The flicker of torchlight caught the silver in her hair, the ash that no washing could remove from her skin. She wore a cloak of plain wool, the hood drawn low, and though she spoke softly, every word carried through the dark like a spark. Cersei thinks she has silenced the gods, she said, but the seven do not vanish with their temple. They live wherever justice breathes. The faith militant are broken, yet their cause lives in us. The gathered men and women bowed their heads. They were a ragged lot, former brothers of the faith, beggars, servants, even soldiers stripped of honor. Yet their eyes burned with belief, for belief was all they had left. One of them, a thin youth with a scarred cheek, lifted his gaze. You speak as one chosen, my lady. Are you not the god's hand? Margaery smiled faintly. The gods choose no hand, but perhaps they guide it. The words were careful, measured. She had learned from her years among courtiers that faith was as dangerous as ambition. The people must see her as both savior and servant, never one without the other. As the meeting ended, she lingered by the flickering flame of the last torch, watching the smoke curl toward the ceiling. The scent of old oil and dust clung to her. In her mind, she saw again the wildfire's green light, and the memory turned her stomach to stone. Cersei, she murmured, her voice low. Your fire did not burn me. It tempered me. Far above in the Red Keep, Queen Cersei held her court of silence. Few dared to speak freely in her presence now. Even the lords of the Crownlands found their tongues weighed by fear. The Iron Throne loomed like a shadow behind her, its blades cold and gleaming. She sat upon it rarely, for even she found no comfort there. Instead, she paced the council chamber, wine in hand, eyes sharp as daggers. Reports from the city, your grace, said Qyburn, his voice quiet. The small folk grow restless. They whisper of the Tyrell girl again. Cersei's gaze snapped toward him. Whisper what? That she lives. The queen laughed, short, cruel, hollow. Let them whisper. Ghosts do not trouble lions. Yet this ghost gathers the poor, Qyburn pressed. They light candles in her name. The guards have put out many, but the flames return each night. Cersei turned toward the window. From there, she could see the city stretching out below, black roofs and narrow streets, the smoke rising like uncoiled serpents. "Candles are easily crushed," she said. "Send the gold cloaks, root them out. Any who speak her name shall hang." "As you command," murmured Qyburn. But when he bowed, his eyes flickered uneasily. Even he could not banish the feeling that the city itself had turned against its queen. In the Undercity, Margaery moved among the poor in daylight now, disguised as a healer. The name she used was Mira, and she bore a pouch of herbs and bandages wherever she went. The small folk welcomed her, for no maester came to the slums, and no gold cloak dared walk among the pestilent alleys. Children followed her steps, women kissed her hands, and men bowed their heads in silent thanks. She asked little in return, only that they remember her words. "Mercy is the seed of justice. One day it will bloom." Her work was slow, but it spread like roots through the soil. Even the guards began to speak her name in secret, and some among them turned from the queen's service to hers. One evening, as she washed the blood from a wounded man's arm, a figure approached from the doorway. Eleanor, cloaked and breathless from haste. "You cannot stay here," she whispered. "The queen's soldiers scour the streets. They burn any house found with candles in your name." Margaery did not look up. "Then they will burn half the city before they find me." "This is not jest," Eleanor hissed. "She fears you now. That makes her twice as dangerous." At last, Margaery set down the cloth and met her cousin's eyes. "Fear cuts both ways. Let her strike at shadows. Each blow will only make the people hate her more. When they cry out for light, I will be there." Eleanor knelt beside her, her face drawn. "You play a perilous game." "I play the only game that remains." Winter's first frost came early that year. The chill crept into the stones of the city, freezing wells and stiffening hands. Hunger stalked every street. The queen's stores grew thin, for the reach no longer sent its grain. From the harbor came darker tidings, ships flying the sigil of the rose seen off the coast, their sails green against the gray sky. Cersei's spies brought word to the throne room before dusk. "The Tyrell banners sail for Blackwater Bay," said one breathless messenger. "We think they carry Lady Olenna's men." Cersei's lips twisted. "So the old viper comes to avenge her whelp. Shall we ready the scorpions, your grace?" "No," she said slowly. "Not yet. Let her come closer. Let her see what her blood bought her, a city of ashes. When she lands, the lion will be waiting." But in her heart, unease stirred again. The realm was growing colder, hungrier, and her enemies multiplied like weeds. 3 nights later, in the caverns below the city, Margaery received a visitor cloaked in green silk. When the hood fell back, the torchlight caught silver hair and eyes sharp with love and sorrow. "My queen," Lady Olenna said softly. Margaery stood frozen for a heartbeat before falling to her knees. "Grandmother." The old woman took her hands, tracing the scars left by the fire. "I heard the whispers, but I dared not hope. You lived." "Barely," Margaery breathed, "but I could not die, not while she sits the throne." Olenna's eyes gleamed with fury. "Then we shall unseat her. I have men, ships, coin enough to buy the loyalty of half the city." Margaery shook her head. "No, swords cannot win this. She rules through fear. I must take that from her, root and stem. Let her hear my name in every prayer, see my face in every dream. Only then will the people cast her down." The Queen of Thorns studied her for a long moment, pride warring with sorrow in her gaze. "You sound like a Tyrell," she said at last, cunning wrapped in courtesy. "I taught you well." Margaery smiled faintly. You taught me that beauty is a weapon and patience its sharpest edge. Olenna leaned closer, her voice a whisper of steel. Then sharpen it, child, for the lioness grows desperate, and desperate beasts bite hardest before they fall. When dawn broke, the first snowflakes fell upon the city, soft, silent, and cold. The people awoke to find flowers scattered upon the steps of the great sept's ruin. White roses, fresh and fragrant, laid by unseen hands. By noon, there were hundreds. By dusk, thousands. And when night came, torches burned beside them. The city's heart beat again, not with fear, but with remembrance. From the tower of the Red Keep, Cersei saw the glow spreading through the streets, and for the first time since the wildfire, she felt the chill of dread. The rose had risen once more, and it was coming for her. The snows deepened over the reachless city, dusting its roofs in ghostly white. In the pale light of dawn, King's Landing seemed almost beautiful again, the filth and ruin hidden beneath a thin veil of frost. Yet beauty, as Margaery Tyrell knew well, was only ever a disguise. Beneath that whiteness lay rot, and beneath the silence, the restless murmur of rebellion. From the ruins of the great sept, where green fire had once devoured stone and soul alike, a garden had begun to grow. Winter roses, small and white, sprouted from cracks in the scorched ground. No one knew who tended them, yet each morning there were more. The small folk whispered that the gods themselves had planted them, a sign that the realm's true queen yet watched over her people. In truth, it was Margaery and her hidden followers who placed them there, one by one, each flower a seed of remembrance, a quiet act of defiance against the fire that had sought to erase her name. That morning, she stood among them, her hood drawn low against the cold, her fingers numb as she laid the last bloom at the foot of a blackened statue. The marble face had melted away, leaving only a vague shape, neither god nor saint, but something caught between. "Do you think they believe it?" Eleanor asked softly beside her. "They must," Margaery said, her breath forming white ghosts in the air. "Belief is stronger than steel. When the people's hearts turn, even thrones will crumble." Eleanor's gaze swept over the quiet street. "And what then? What will you do when the lioness falls?" Margaery's eyes, gray as the winter sea, fixed upon the Red Keep far above. "When she falls," she said, "I will not need to strike the blow. The city itself will devour her." Cersei Lannister's reign, though wrapped in gold and guarded by fear, had begun to fray. Her rule was built on ashes, her coffers thin, her allies silent, her enemies multiplying like wolves in the snow. From dawn until dusk, petitions filled her hall, starving merchants begging for coin, lords demanding grain, and the cries of the faithless, who cursed her for burning their holiest house. She silenced some with gold, others with the sword, yet their numbers grew with each passing moon. And now there was the matter of the flowers. At first, she had ignored them, thinking them the fancy of madmen. But when word reached her that the entire courtyard before the sept glowed with candlelight each night, she could no longer bear it. "Find who tends those blossoms," she ordered the commander of her guards. "Tear out their tongues and their roots with them." The man bowed. "We have tried, Your Grace, but they appear as if by magic. By dawn the flowers are there, and by dusk the candles burn again." Cersei's hands clenched upon the arms of her throne. "There is no magic in this city, only rats, and rats can be drowned." Margaery's following grew bolder. They called themselves the Silent Faith, though silence was far from their weapon. They carried her words through the taverns and markets, spreading tales of her survival, that she had been chosen by the Seven to rise from the ashes, that her heart had been touched by divine fire. She did not encourage the rumors, but neither did she deny them. It was better that the people saw her as something more than mortal, saints inspired where queens merely ruled. In secret, she met with lords who had once pledged to the Reach, men of lesser houses who had fled Cersei's wrath. They came to her by night, cloaked and hooded, bearing tidings from the countryside. Lady Olenna had secured ships along the coast, and men whispered that the banners of Highgarden would rise again come spring. "Your grandmother awaits your word," one of them said. "Say but the name, and she will march." Margaery looked down at the map spread before her, a crude drawing marked with charcoal lines for roads and rivers. "Not yet," she said. "Cersei's walls are high, and her spies are many. We will not win by steel alone." "What then, my queen?" the man asked. "By hunger," she replied, "by faith, by memory. Let her starve while the people feed on hope." Winter nights fell early, and with them came whispers of strange signs. Lights seen upon the river, ghostly figures walking the streets. In every corner of the city, candles burned in windows, some shaped like roses, others like crowns. The gold cloaks patrolled harder, dragging people from their homes, but the light always returned. The queen's decrees were torn from the walls as soon as they were nailed, and always the flowers appeared. Margaery's followers had grown too many to count. They gathered in ruined temples, in cellars, even in the old crypts beneath the city. To them, she was not merely queen, but a symbol, the promise that fire could not kill what was just. Yet she knew well that symbols could not stand forever. A storm was coming, and she meant to be ready when it broke. One night, a messenger reached her hidden chamber, a boy no older than 12, mud on his boots and terror in his eyes. "They're coming," he gasped. "The Queen's men. They know you meet here." Without hesitation, Margaery seized the silver circlet that had become her emblem, tucking it beneath her cloak. "Eleanor," she said, "take the others, through the tunnels. I will lead them away." Her cousin's eyes widened. "No, there is no time," Margaery said, and there was iron in her voice now. "Go." Eleanor obeyed, vanishing with the others into the darkness. Moments later, the door burst open. Gold cloaks flooded the chamber, torches flaring in their hands. Their captain stepped forward, his face half hidden by shadow. "By order of Queen Cersei of House Lannister," he declared, "you are under arrest for treason and heresy." Margaery raised her hooded head, and by order of the gods, she said, "You are too late." Before the man could reply, a roar split the night, not of fire, but of the people. From the streets above came the sound of thousands shouting, their voices rising in defiance. The gold cloaks hesitated, fear creeping into their eyes. Margaery smiled faintly. "Do you hear them?" she said. "They are the realm, and they have chosen." The captain turned toward the noise, cursing. By the time he looked back, the woman before him was gone, her cloak trailing through a gap in the stones, leading into the warren of tunnels below. At dawn, the city woke to chaos. Fires burned not with green flame, but with rebellion. The Red Keep's banners were torn down in the outer wards, replaced by strips of white cloth marked with a single rose. From her tower, Cersei watched the smoke rising. Her hands trembled as she clutched the cup of wine that had long been her only comfort. "Who leads them?" she demanded. "No one, Your Grace," came the answer. "They say they march for the flower reborn." Her cup fell, shattering upon the marble floor. That night, Margaery stood upon the hill overlooking the city, cloaked in white, the wind tugging at her hair. Below her, Torches flickered in 1,000 hands, a sea of light moving through the streets. Eleanor stood beside her, tears bright in her eyes. "You've done it," she whispered. "They rise for you." Margaery did not smile. "No," she said quietly. "They rise for themselves. I am only the flame that shows them they were never truly in darkness." She lifted her gaze toward the Red Keep, its towers looming like jagged teeth against the night sky. "Now," she said, "let the lioness learn what it means to fear the rose." And with the dawn, the bells of King's Landing rang once more, not in mourning nor in judgment, but in uprising. The city that had once burned for Margaery Tyrell now burned for her again, but this time it was not green fire that filled its streets. It was hope. The dawn broke red over the Blackwater, staining the waters like spilled blood. Smoke still curled from the lower wards of King's Landing, where the night's fires smoldered in the bones of the streets. Bells rang wildly, not in mourning now, but in fury and confusion, for the city had woken to find itself divided. The gold cloaks still held the Red Keep, but the rest of the city belonged to the people and to the rose that had risen among them. From the Tower of the Hand, Cersei watched the turmoil below. Her pale hair was unbound, her eyes dark and sleepless. The sounds of the crowd reached her faintly. Chants, prayers, the clatter of steel upon stone. "Somewhere down there," the whispers said. She walked again, the girl Cersei had burned, the rival she had buried. "She's dead," Cersei muttered to herself, pacing the marble floor. "She's ash, nothing more." Qyburn stood at her side, silent as a shadow. "Perhaps," he said softly, "but the people do not believe so. They speak of miracles, of roses blooming in snow, of a woman who walks unharmed through fire." The queen whirled on him, fury flashing in her eyes. "Then burn the flowers. Burn them all." "They grow faster than we can cut them, Your Grace," he replied. "Even the soldiers begin to doubt. They light candles in her name when they think none see." Cersei's hand struck the table, rattling the goblets. "Fools. They pray to ghosts while their queen still breathes." Qyburn inclined his head slightly. "Ghosts, Your Grace, are often more beloved than the living." Her eyes narrowed, and for a long moment she said nothing. Then coldly, "Send word to Euron Greyjoy. Tell him I will have his fleet in the bay within the fortnight, and find me the Tyrell girl's body. I care not if I must dig through every stone of the Sept's ruins. I will see her bones crushed to dust." He bowed and withdrew, leaving Cersei alone with the whisper of the sea wind. Beneath that same wind, in the catacombs beneath the city, Margaery Tyrell prepared to strike. The tunnels that had once carried the alchemist's secrets now served her cause. Their blackened walls echoed with murmured prayers and the rustle of movement, the footsteps of hundreds. The silent faith had grown beyond secrecy. It had become an army of the forgotten. "Tonight," she told them, her voice low but carrying, "the lioness will hear our truth. No fire, no sword, no crown forged in sin can rule forever." They raised their torches in answer, their faces gaunt but bright with belief. Eleanor stepped forward, her cloak dusted with ash. "The gates to the lower city are ours," she said. "The gold cloaks in the Street of Steel have yielded, but the Red Keep still stands strong." "It will not for long," Margaery answered. "Not when the people rise within its very walls." She drew from her belt the silver circlet that had survived the wildfire, twisted, blackened, yet still whole. Holding it high, she spoke. "This is not the crown of a queen, but the proof of what endures. Let it remind them that roses grow best where the soil has been burned." The crowd knelt, their torches bowing like stars before dawn. When Margaery lowered the circlet, her eyes met Eleanor's. "Gather the banners. At sunset, we march for the keep." The day passed like the slow drawing of a blade. Cersei's men fortified the gates, archers lined the walls, and every bell in the city rang warning. But the people no longer feared their queen. They had feared too long, starved too long, bled too long. Now they hungered for justice, and justice wore the face of the woman who had once smiled down upon them from the steps of the Great Sept. As the sun dipped behind the western hills, a hush fell upon the city. From every alley and square, figures emerged, beggars and bakers, soldiers and servants, their torches raised high. And at their head, cloaked in white, walked Margaery Tyrell. Her steps were measured, her gaze steady. She carried no sword, only a banner, a field of white bearing a single rose, blood red at its heart. When they reached the outer walls of the keep, she halted. From the battlements above, crossbows glittered in the torchlight. The captain of the guard called down, "By the Queen's command, disperse. This rebellion ends tonight." Margaery lifted her head. "Tell your queen," she said, her voice carrying clear through the chill air, "that her fire failed to kill me. Tell her the gods have judged and found her wanting." The captain hesitated. All eyes turned to him and to the archers above. Some lowered their bows, others faltered. The silence grew thick as smoke. Then, from among the crowd, a voice cried out, "Long live the true queen!" It spread like a spark on dry grass. "Long live the rose! Long live Margaery!" And then the gates burst. The tide of the people surged forward, unstoppable. The gold cloaks broke ranks. Some fled, others cast down their weapons. The Red Keep, fortress of kings and tyrants alike, trembled beneath the weight of its own sins. Margaery entered not as conqueror, but as judgment. In the throne room, Cersei waited. The Iron Throne loomed behind her, its edges glinting like fangs in the firelight. She wore no crown now, only a plain gown of black. In one hand, she held a goblet of wine, in the other, a dagger. When the doors burst open, she did not flinch. Margaery stepped through, the crowd halting behind her. For a moment, the two women faced one another in silence, queen and ghost, lioness and rose. "I should have known," Cersei said softly, setting down her cup. "You were always too clever to die." Margaery's voice was quiet, almost tender. "And you were always too proud to live." Cersei's smile was thin. "Do you mean to kill me then? To sit upon that chair of blades and call yourself merciful?" "I mean to let the people decide," Margaery said. "Your rule burned their city. Let them douse it with truth." Cersei's hand tightened upon her dagger. "Truth is a weapon, girl, and you have forgotten who taught you how to wield it." Before she could strike, the doors behind Margaery opened wider, and the chamber filled with torchlight. Soldiers and commoners poured in, hundreds of eyes watching, waiting. Cersei looked from them to the throne, to the fire flickering upon its cruel edges. "You think they will thank you?" she hissed. "They will eat you alive, as they did every ruler before you. You will see they love only the next tyrant." "Then let them eat," said Margaery. "I have no crown to lose." The dagger fell from Cersei's hand. It clattered against the stone, its echo ringing through the hall like the toll of a bell. And the lioness, who had once burned her enemies to ash, sank to her knees before the flower that had risen from the ruins. When morning came, the smoke had lifted. The Red Keep stood quiet, its gates open, its throne empty. Margaery stood upon the balcony overlooking the city, her hair unbound, the cold wind tugging at her cloak. The The streets below glimmered with candlelight, thousands upon thousands burning in the dawn. Eleanor stepped beside her. "What now, my queen?" Margaery's gaze lingered upon the horizon, where the sea met the sky. "Now," she said softly, "we begin again. The thorns remain, but the rose still blooms." And as the bells rang over the city, their sound no longer carried the weight of mourning or judgment, but of something rarer. Hope reborn. The fire had failed to destroy her. The realm that had once buried her name now spoke it with reverence. Margaery Tyrell, the shrewdest woman in the realm, had returned not to rule, but to remind the world that even in ashes, the flower endures. Snow fell thick upon the city that winter, burying the blackened stones of the sept and softening the scars of war. King's Landing had known many rulers, yet none quite like the woman who now walked its streets without crown or guards, her hood drawn low, her hands ungloved so that the people might touch them. Margaery Tyrell had refused the Iron Throne. She would not sit upon the chair forged by blood, nor wear the crown that had devoured all who dared claim it. Instead, she governed through the counsel of her people, lords and tradesmen, widows and healers alike, a circle bound by oath rather than fear. The Red Keep had become a different place. Its great hall was open to the poor each morning. Its kitchens fed those who came hungry. The courtly feasts and jeweled gowns were gone, replaced by quiet meals and simple garments of gray and white. Some called it the Age of the Rose, others whispered that it was a dream doomed to fade. Yet, for the first time in living memory, peace touched the city, fragile as frost upon the river. Still, Margaery knew peace was only the space between storms. The lords of the Reach had returned to Highgarden, but not all bowed easily to her cause. Some muttered that she had abandoned her blood's birthright. Others claimed she was bewitched, a servant of the faith reborn. Messages came daily, some bearing oaths of loyalty, others thinly veiled threats. One night, as she sat before the fire in her solar, Eleanor brought her a sealed letter stamped with the sigil of the rose. "It came by Raven from Old Town," her cousin said. "The masters there have seen strange movements along the western shore. Ships, black-sailed, bearing no banners." Margaery broke the seal, reading quickly. Her expression did not change, though the firelight trembled in her eyes. "Euron Greyjoy," she murmured. The lioness called him to her aid. It seems even in defeat she still has teeth. "Cersei lives?" Eleanor asked, startled. "Alive or not, her shadow lingers," Margaery said. "The Ironborn do not sail for mercy. They come for plunder, or vengeance." She rose, setting the parchment aside. "Summon the council. The storm that spared us once may yet return." The council met in the dawn's pale light. Lords and commoners alike crowded the long chamber, the same room where once the small council had whispered treachery behind jeweled doors. Now its tapestries were gone, its windows unshuttered. The sea wind swept through freely, carrying the scent of salt and snow. "They come from the west," said Sir Garth Hightower, a soldier of the Reach whose armor still bore the dents of rebellion. 5, perhaps 10 ships. Raiders, not fleets. "Then they test our strength," said another lord. "If we show weakness, more will follow." Margaery listened, her hands folded before her. "The city cannot bear another siege," she said at last. "Not so soon after the last. We must answer with wisdom, not pride." "Wisdom feeds no wolves," muttered Garth. "Nor does folly tame them," she replied. At her word, messengers were sent to the river forts and the remaining ships in the harbor. By nightfall, fires burned upon the cliffs of Dragonstone, warning beacons that had not been lit since the days of the Targaryens. That evening, as she walked the battlements of the Red Keep, Margaery watched the distant glow upon the sea's edge. The city lay quiet beneath her, its rooftops blanketed in snow, its people sleeping uneasily beneath the weight of rumor. Eleanor joined her, wrapping a cloak around her shoulders. "The people trust you," she said. "They say the gods would not let you fall once and rise again only to be cast down by raiders." Margaery smiled faintly. "The gods perhaps have other games to play. I have learned not to ask their favor twice. You speak as though you doubt them." "I do not doubt the gods," she said softly. "Only men and the fires they kindle." The wind carried the scent of the sea and something darker, tar and iron. Margaery turned her gaze westward. "Tomorrow, the Ironborn will come," she said, "and we will see whether the rose has thorns enough to survive the frost." The next day dawned gray and bitter. By noon, the first ships were sighted, long black hulls cutting through the waves, their sails slick with salt and sleet. The bells of the city tolled, not in terror, but in warning. Margaery stood upon the walls beside her captains, her hair braided tightly beneath her hood. Below, the harbor bristled with hastily armed ships, fishing vessels, merchant cogs, even river barges pressed into service. When the Ironborn came ashore, they found not a city of helpless small folk, but a people united. Archers lined the rooftops. The faith's remnants stood shoulder to shoulder with soldiers of the Reach. Margaery gave the order herself. "Hold the gates," she said. "Show them that fire does not rule us anymore." The clash was swift and brutal. The Ironborn, fierce as wolves, broke upon the city's outer defenses, but could not breach the inner walls. From above, arrows rained like sleet. From below, boiling oil poured upon the invaders. At the height of the battle, a shout rose from the shore, a banner of white and red unfurling against the storm. The ships of the Reach had come at last, led by the Queen of Thorns herself. Olenna's fleet cut through the Ironborn like a scythe through reeds. Their black sails burned as the wind turned against them, driving them back into the sea. When the tide receded, the waves carried only wreckage. That night, the city celebrated, not with feasts or drunken cheer, but with quiet gratitude. Candles burned in every window once more, their light soft and steady against the snow. Margaery walked among her people, unguarded, speaking little, but listening much. She found the wounded tended by healers, the hungry fed from the kitchens, the widowed comforted by her followers. When at last she returned to her chamber, she found her grandmother waiting. Olenna's sharp eyes gleamed with weary pride. "You've done what none before you managed," the old woman said. "You've made this cursed city love you." Margaery smiled. "Love is fragile, grandmother. It withers when left untended." "Then keep tending it," said Olenna. "But remember, love cannot guard you from blades. There will always be another war, another enemy." "I know," Margaery said. She turned toward the window, watching the candlelight ripple across the bay. "But for tonight, the realm breathes. That will do." Olenna's hand, thin and trembling, rested upon her shoulder. "You were born for this, child, not for crowns or thrones, but for rebuilding what others destroyed." Margaery looked out into the cold night. "If only rebuilding were enough," she whispered. The Queen of Thorns smiled sadly. "It never is, but it is the best of all beginnings." When the dawn came, the bells of King's Landing rang once more, their sound clean and bright. The snow upon the Sept's ruins shimmered in the early light, and among the white drifts, the winter roses still bloomed. And in the quiet that followed the storm, Margaery Tyrell knelt among them, brushing the frost from their petals. Fire tried to consume you, she murmured, but you endured. So will I. The wind carried her words toward the sea, where the waves broke softly upon the shore. The queen who had walked through fire now ruled not with flame, but with the enduring grace of the rose, patient, steadfast, and unyielding, even in the heart of winter. Winter tightened its grip upon the realm. The rivers froze at their edges, and the hills beyond King's Landing lay shrouded in frost, their outlines softened beneath a sky of iron gray. The sea itself seemed asleep, its waves sluggish, its breath turned to mist. Within the city, fires burned from dawn till dusk, but the warmth could not drive away the unease that hung in every shadow. Though the Ironborn had been driven back and the city saved, peace was never a thing to be trusted in Westeros, for peace was merely the stillness before a sword was drawn. Margaery Tyrell knew this well. Each morning she walked the ramparts of the Red Keep, her cloak heavy with snow, her eyes turned northward where the horizon blurred into cloud and memory. Messengers came and went, bearing tidings from across the realm. The riverlands bled again, the Vale stirred, and the north, though distant, whispered of strange banners rising in the snow. Still she ruled, quiet and firm. The council obeyed her will, the people adored her. Yet even adoration could not banish doubt. To rule was to stand upon shifting sand, and the queen who had once been burned alive knew better than most how swiftly the ground could open beneath her. One night, as the wind howled through the narrow streets, a raven came bearing a message sealed with black wax. Eleanor brought it to her in silence, her face pale. "It bears no sigil," she said. Margaery broke the seal and read. The words were few, but enough to chill her blood. "The lioness yet lives. She sails for Pentos. Beware the shadow that wears her name." She read the line thrice before folding the parchment and staring into the fire. Cersei Lannister, alive. The thought was both impossible and inevitable. A creature of such will did not die easily, not even when the world itself wished it. Eleanor saw the look in her eyes. If she lives, she will seek revenge. "She always does," Margaery murmured. "And revenge is a fire that consumes itself, yet until it burns out, it scorches all it touches." She turned from the flames, her shadow long against the stone. "Send riders to the docks. Watch the ships that come and go. If she returns, I will know before her feet touch the shore." Weeks passed in restless quiet. The city mended its wounds. Trade returned, and with it, the laughter of children once more echoing through the markets. But beneath the surface, old wounds festered. The nobles of the Reach whispered of succession, of crowns, of thrones. Margaery had refused the Iron Throne, but power abhors a vacuum. Where she sought unity, others saw opportunity. One morning, as snow drifted through the open hall, Sir Garth Hightower strode before her council. His armor gleamed silver in the pale light. "Your Grace," he said, bowing low, "the lords of the Reach beg your return to Highgarden. They say the realm needs a crowned monarch once more." Murmurs filled the hall. Some nodded in agreement, others waited in silence for her answer. Margaery rose slowly. "A crown is a burden," she said. "Too many have died beneath its weight. The realm needs peace, not another war for gold and titles." "Peace cannot last without power," Garth argued. "If you will not take the crown, another will." "Then let them," she said simply. "The crown does not make the ruler, the people do. So long as I hold their faith, I need no throne of iron." Her words silenced them, yet doubt lingered in their eyes. She saw it and said no more. To force faith was to lose it. After the council dispersed, Olenna Tyrell remained behind. The old woman's eyes, sharp as ever, studied her granddaughter with weary affection. "You have a good heart, child," Olenna said, "but good hearts seldom win wars." "This is not a war, grandmother," Margaery replied softly. "It is healing." Olenna's lips curved faintly. "And yet even healing can kill if it takes too long. Remember that." That night, Margaery dreamed of fire. She stood again in the sept, the green light blooming around her, her body weightless and burning. But when she awoke, the sound she heard was not fire. It was the creak of wood and the cry of gulls. She went to the window. Far off in the bay, sails glimmered, black against the dawn. Eleanor burst through the door moments later. "Ships, my queen," she gasped. "3, perhaps more. They fly no banners." Margaery's heart sank. "So it begins," she whispered. By midday, the harbor watch confirmed it. The ships had come from the east, from Pentos. When the tide turned, a single small boat rowed ashore. The figure who stepped from it was cloaked in gray, her face hidden. She moved with a regal bearing, her guards silent as death. The people watched from afar, whispering among themselves. Word reached the Red Keep swiftly. A noblewoman claiming kinship with House Lannister seeks audience. Margaery received her in the great hall. The stranger entered without bowing, her hood falling back to reveal a face pale as bone, framed by golden hair. "Cersei," Margaery said quietly. The Queen Mother smiled, though her eyes were hollow. "You thought me dead. I thought so too once, but the gods are fond of irony." "You have no claim here," Margaery said. "Your reign ended in fire." "So did yours," Cersei replied. "And yet here we stand, two phantoms of a dying age." She stepped closer. "You took my city, my crown, my son's memory. Did you think I would forget?" "I took nothing that was not already yours to lose," Margaery said. "Your own hand lit the fire that burned you." For a heartbeat, neither moved. The torches flickered, shadows dancing like ghosts between them. Cersei's voice dropped to a whisper. "Do you know what kept me alive, child? Hatred. It burns longer than wildfire." "Then burn," said Margaery, turning away. "The realm has no need of your kind of flame." Cersei did not leave the city. She took residence in the ruins of Maegor's Holdfast, gathering what remained of her followers, outlaws, broken knights, and zealots who still saw her as the gods' chosen vengeance. Each night their fires glowed red against the walls, a reminder that peace was fragile and ghosts could still bleed. Margaery watched from her balcony, her expression unreadable. "She means to destroy all that we've built," Eleanor said beside her. "She cannot," Margaery replied. "The people will not follow her again." "But fear spreads faster than hope." Margaery turned to her, her gaze calm but resolute. "Then we will give them something stronger than fear." She descended to the courtyard, where hundreds had gathered for evening prayer. Snow drifted among them, their faces lit by candlelight. "My people," she said, her voice rising above the wind. "Once this city burned with fire and hate, but we endured. We rose from ash, not by sword or crown, but by faith. That faith is our shield, against kings, against queens, against the ghosts that haunt us still." A murmur rippled through the crowd. The candles flared brighter, their light reflecting in her eyes. "She will not burn us again," Margaery said, "for we have learned to bloom even in the cold." The people knelt. From the walls of the Red Keep, the sight was wondrous, a sea of light in the dark, unmoving, unafraid. And upon the wind that swept through the city came a sound like the softest chime of bells, the voice of winter itself, carrying the promise that even in the darkest season, the rose endures. The new year dawned cold and sullen. The snows no longer came in gentle drifts, but in heavy veils that buried the cobbled streets of King's Landing beneath silence. Ravens gathered upon the rooftops, black against the white, their cries echoing like omens. The city, which had once burned with rebellion and hope, now slept under winter's heavy hand. Yet beneath that hush, the pulse of unrest still beat faintly, the faint, steady throb of a wound not yet healed. Margaery Tyrell stood upon the balcony of the Red Keep, her cloak drawn close against the bitter wind. Below, the black water lay frozen at its edges, ships locked fast in the ice like beasts caught mid-flight. The world seemed caught between life and death, waiting for something unseen. Behind her, the fire burned low, casting her shadow long across the marble floor. She heard Eleanor enter, her boots crunching lightly over the scattered frost that the servants had tracked in. "My queen," said Eleanor softly. "The reports from the Reach have arrived." "Bad news rarely travels slowly," Margaery said without turning. Eleanor hesitated. "House Redwyn withholds its ships. They say their ports are besieged by famine. The harvests fail, the roads are buried, the people starve." Margaery sighed, her breath clouding the air. "And the lords hoard their grain while the small folk die. Their patience wears thin," Eleanor continued. "Some whisper that the gods have turned from you, that the rose wilts in winter." Margaery turned at that, her eyes gleaming in the firelight. "The gods do not wither," she said. "Nor do I. Let them whisper. Words cannot break what fire could not." Still, in her heart, she felt the chill of doubt. Faith, she had learned, was like a flame. It must be fed, or it would fade to embers. That night, Margaery summoned her council. The great hall of the Red Keep, once filled with splendor, was now austere, its tapestries removed, its gold stored to feed the poor. Around the long oak table sat her closest advisors, Sir Garth Hightower, Lord Rowan of Golden Grove, Maester Benor, and Eleanor at her side. "The famine spreads north," said Benor, unrolling a map. "If no aid comes before the thaw, thousands will perish." "And what aid can we send?" asked Garth. "Our own stores are bare. The Reach has turned inward, and the Stormlands send only silence." "Then we will share what we have," Margaery said. "Every grain, every crumb. The city will not survive on fear, nor on wealth. We must teach them to stand together, or they will fall apart." Lord Rowan frowned. "And when they blame you for their hunger?" "Then let them," she said. "A queen's duty is not to be loved, but to endure." Her words silenced them. She had spoken them without pride, only certainty. After the council dispersed, Eleanor lingered by her side. "You give them everything, even what little you have left. But how long can you bear it?" "As long as I must," Margaery said simply. "So long as one spark of mercy remains in this realm, I will not see it extinguished." Weeks passed, and the winter deepened. The city grew quiet, save for the moan of the wind and the creak of ships frozen in their berths. Each morning, Margaery rose before dawn to walk among the people. She wore no crown, only a cloak of plain gray, and those who saw her bowed with weary reverence. She brought what food she could, loaves baked from the keep's dwindling stores, dried fish from the river, even the roots from the royal gardens. Some days, she found laughter in the streets again, the laughter of children too young to understand despair. Other days, she found only bodies, curled like shadows beneath the snow. Yet still she walked, and still the people whispered her name. In the darkest hours of one such morning, as she returned to the keep, a figure stepped from the shadows, cloaked, limping, his face hidden. The guards tensed, but Margaery raised a hand. The stranger bowed low. "Your Grace," he rasped, "I bring word from the east." Margaery studied him. "From Pentos. Aye, the lioness is dead." The words hung in the air like smoke. "Dead?" she repeated. The man nodded. "Poison, they say. She took her own cup rather than be betrayed by those she sought to rule. Her ship returned empty, its sails black and torn. The sea keeps her bones." For a long time, Margaery said nothing. Then she turned away, her face unreadable. "Go," she said quietly. "Find warmth, food, and rest. You have done your duty." When he was gone, she stood for a long while before the dying embers of the hall's hearth. Cersei Lannister, gone at last. The lioness had roared her final defiance, not upon a battlefield, but in the silence of her own defeat. And yet, as Margaery watched the last coal fade to ash, she felt no triumph. Only a deep, weary sorrow. The game was over. But what had it cost them all? Spring came late that year. The snow melted in slow rivulets, carrying away the grime of winter. The city stirred, sluggish, but alive. The first ships from the Reach arrived laden with grain, and with them came songs of the queen who endured. Margaery walked again among her people, now under skies streaked with pale blue. The bells of the great sept, rebuilt from its ruins, rang anew for the first time since the fire. The white roses planted in the ashes bloomed once more, their petals soft as silk. She knelt among them, brushing the earth from her fingers. The scent was sweet and faintly bitter. "Fire could not destroy you," she murmured, "and now you return. Perhaps there is hope for us yet." Behind her, Eleanor approached. "The people ask for you to bless the new sept," she said. "They will not enter it until you do." Margaery smiled faintly. "Then let them wait a little longer. The gods need no walls to hear our prayers." She stood and turned her gaze toward the red keep. The morning light caught her hair, turning it to gold. "The lioness is gone," Eleanor said softly. "At last, there is peace." "For now," Margaery replied. "But peace is a seed, not a stone. It must be tended, or it will wither." She walked on, her steps slow but sure, the hem of her cloak brushing the earth that had once been ash. All around her, the city breathed again. Bells chimed, waves lapped against the harbor, and the wind carried the faint scent of roses through the streets. The fire had come and gone. The queen who had risen from it had endured her trials, her enemies, even her doubts. Now she belonged not to the courts or the crowns of men, but to the realm itself, its memory, its mercy, its hope. Margaery Tyrell, the shrewdest woman in the realm, had conquered not by blade nor by deceit, but by the quiet, stubborn grace of one who refused to die. And as the sun rose higher over the city, its light fell upon the garden of the sept, where white petals drifted through the air like snow. A final benediction to the woman who had taught the world that from ashes, even the softest flower may bloom again. Spring ripened into summer, and the snows that had once shrouded King's Landing were only a memory, washed away by rain and time. The city lived again. Its harbor thrummed with ships, its markets hummed with voices, and from the rebuilt sept of Baelor rose the sound of bells, not for death or judgment, but for life. The wounds of war had begun to heal, though faint scars remained upon every wall, every face. Margaery Tyrell walked the streets as freely as any commoner. The people no longer bowed to her with fear or ceremony. They greeted her with warmth, with laughter, with the ease one might offer a friend. She no longer wore crowns, nor jewels, only a circlet of simple silver, and robes of pale green that brushed the cobblestones as she passed. She had become a symbol of something gentler than power, something more enduring than victory. Yet she knew peace was never a gift freely given. It was a fragile thing, woven of 1,000 choices, and each day it demanded to be kept. At the Red Keep, her council had changed. The banners of the lion were gone. The stag and the rose hung side by side. Lords and small folk shared the same table now, bakers and smiths among knights and nobles. It was not an easy balance. Pride died slowly, and hunger for power slower still. "Grain from the Reach fills our granaries," said Lord Rowan one morning, "but the Stormlands refuse our trade. Lord Selmy names himself King of the Marches and demands tribute." Margaery set aside her parchment, her fingers steepled before her. "Tribute? From whom?" "From you, Your Grace." A murmur rippled through the hall. She smiled faintly. "Then he asks from one who does not keep a crown. Tell him he shall have my friendship instead, and, if he prefers, my silence. Both are worth more than gold." The council laughed softly, tension easing. She waited for it to fade before she spoke again. "Still, send him aid. A hungry man makes a cruel neighbor. We have seen enough cruelty to last a lifetime." When the meeting ended, Eleanor lingered as always. "You show mercy to those who would not show it to you," she said. "Why?" "Because someone must," Margaery answered simply. "If the realm forgets mercy, it will learn nothing from its suffering." Eleanor studied her face, serene, yet shadowed by something deep and old. "You still dream of the fire?" "Every night," Margaery said softly, "and every morning I rise from it anew." That evening, she rode beyond the city for the first time since its rebuilding. The fields that had once been scorched were green again, thick with wildflowers. Children played by the riverbanks. Women gathered herbs among the stones. The air smelled of life, of the faint sweetness of soil and rain. As she passed, the people paused in their work to wave or bow. None called her queen now. They called her Lady of the Lighted Garden, for she had turned ruin to bloom. She dismounted beside a small brook and knelt to drink. The water was cool, pure, untainted by ash. For a long while, she simply watched its ripples, listening to the hum of bees and the rustle of leaves. It was strange, she thought, to find peace in the same world that had once devoured her. Stranger still to know she had no hunger left for thrones or crowns. She thought of her grandmother then, fierce, sharp-tongued, forever scheming. Olenna's ashes rested in the gardens of Highgarden now, her name etched into the stone beneath the flowering hedges. "I have built what she dreamed of," Margaery murmured. "A realm that does not fear its queen." But even as she spoke, the wind shifted. From the south, faint and distant, came the sound of drums. By the next day, riders brought word. A host had risen in the Stormlands. Old lords and exiled knights, sworn to the memory of Cersei Lannister, marched beneath banners black as pitch. They called themselves the Sons of the Flame. Their leader, a man said to bear the lioness's sigil upon his breast, had vowed to reclaim the city, for the true blood of kings. When the message was read aloud, the council fell into fearful silence. "They are few," said Sir Garth at last, "but the small folk will panic if they hear of it. Shall we send riders to crush them?" "No," Margaery said. "They are not an army, only a story." "A story can burn as fiercely as fire," warned Eleanor. "Then let it burn itself out," Margaery replied. "If we meet them with swords, we give them the war they crave. I will face them with truth instead." And so she did. The next week, Margaery rode south with only a handful of guards. Her followers begged her to remain, but she would not. "If I am to lead the realm," she said, "I must walk among it. A queen hidden behind walls is no better than a ghost." The journey was long, the roads muddy from spring rain. At last, they came upon the rebels' camp, little more than tents and fires scattered across the moors. Their banners hung limp, their men gaunt and shivering. At their center stood a man, clad in old Lannister red, his hair silvering at the temples. When he saw her approach, he laughed bitterly. "So the ghost comes to meet her executioner." "I come to meet no one's ghost," Margaery said. "Only a man too weary to know what he fights for." He sneered. "I fight for the realm that once was, for order, for strength." "Then look around you," she said, gesturing to the ragged tents, the men who watched in silence. "Is this strength? Hunger and fear are all that your fire left behind." The man faltered. "Cersei Lannister was our queen." "Cersei Lannister was a woman of great fire," Margaery said softly, "and fire destroys all it touches, even those who worship it." Her words carried through the camp. No one moved. Only the wind answered, whispering through the dry grass. At last, the man dropped his sword. One by one, the others followed. Margaery turned to her guards. "See that they are fed," she said. "The war ends here." By the time she returned to King's Landing, the sun was setting. The air shimmered gold, and the river burned with light. She dismounted before the sept, where candles glowed among the gardens. The people had gathered to greet her, their faces bright with trust. Margaery stood before them and raised her hand. "No more fire," she said. "No more crowns. We have known too much of both. Let the realm remember not its wars, but its renewal." The crowd murmured, their candles lifted high. As the bells began to ring, Margaery looked toward the sky, toward the fading sun, the faint shimmer of stars. In her heart, there was no triumph, only stillness. The great game of power had ended, and she had outlived it not by winning, but by refusing to play. For the first time, she felt truly free. She turned toward the gardens, where the white roses swayed in the breeze. Their fragrance filled the air, rich and pure. She knelt among them and whispered, "For every flame there is a flower, and where the flower blooms, the fire dies." The wind stirred the petals, scattering them like snow across the earth. And there, in the quiet heart of summer, the story of Margaery Tyrell, the shrewdest woman in the realm, found its end, not in conquest or crown, but in peace. A peace she had earned with every wound, every whisper, every breath that defied the fire.